The night pressed in like a conspirator, dark and endless. The pirate village was quieter now, though the remnants of the day's chaos lingered in the air like smoke. Fitzroy and his companion huddled around a small campfire, its crackling flames barely pushing back the shadows. The light danced over their faces, casting them in stark relief, and for the first time, Fitzroy truly saw his companion whole. The other boy looked of someone who had lived more years than his age betrayed. His eyes, deep and guarded, carried the weight of something Fitzroy recognized all too well: loss. They ate in silence, their wooden bowls cradled in their hands, the thin, spiced stew pooling at the bottoms. It wasn't much, but it was warm, and Fitzroy forced it down as though it could fill more than just his stomach. My companion, the other prisoner, was named Garret. He was quiet and soft-spoken. He had a sister. They were born to British merchant parents living in India, orphaned after a cholera epidemic. The words echoed in Fitzroy's mind as he glanced at Garret, who ate methodically, his gaze fixed on the flames. Fitzroy had been alone for so long, his world reduced to survival and silence. But now there was Garret, another piece in this strange, terrible puzzle. And despite the fear, despite the strangeness of it all, Fitzroy felt something stir. Not hope, but something close enough to give a degree of comfort. The soft scuffle of movement pulled Fitzroy's attention. The old man emerged from the shadows, his presence heralded by the faint clink of the golden rings atop his staff. The monkeys came with him, moving with frenzied energy, their small forms darting in and out of the firelight. Fitzroy straightened as the old man approached, his expression as blank and unreadable as ever. With a low grunt, the old man placed 2 bundles before the boys. Fitzroy reached out tentatively, unwrapping the cloth to reveal a set of local clothing, finely made and surprisingly clean. Garret mirrored him, his movements cautious but deliberate. The old man stepped back, gesturing toward a stack of books piled on a table. The spines gleamed faintly in the firelight, their titles an odd juxtaposition of cultures. Western Greek philosophers alongside Eastern Buddhist masters. Garret was rough around the edges, but quick in both mind and spirit. And though I was a year older than he, we were very much equals in speed and strength. The boys exchanged a glance, unspoken curiosity passing between them. They adorned their new clothes, the fabric strange against their skin, but freeing compared to the ragged tatters they had worn until now. As they finished, the monkeys began tugging at their arms and legs, chittering impatiently. The old man whistled sharply, the sound high and commanding, and began to walk away. He never spoke, never uttered a single word to the boys. His language was one of grunts, hisses, and whistles, each sound accompanied by a gesture that made his meaning clear. The boys followed, compelled by a mixture of fear and curiosity. The old man's staff struck the ground with a deliberate rhythm, the golden rings above it chiming faintly. The monkeys scurried ahead, darting back every so often as if to ensure the boys were keeping pace. There was a strange pull, a morbid curiosity, being unsure of what design they had for us, and the penalty if we did not follow through. As they moved through the village, the fires burned low, their embers casting long shadows against the ornate carvings of the main building. The pirates' laughter had faded, replaced by the soft hum of insects and the crash of waves against a pristine beach in the far-off distance. The night was alive, but it felt as though it held its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. Fitzroy glanced at Garret, who seemed as uneasy as he felt. They were caught in the current now, swept along by forces they could not hope to understand. The old man led them onward, deeper into the heart of the village, where the darkness felt heavier, more intentional. Fitzroy's mind raced, the questions piling up with no answers in sight. What design did these people have for them? What role were they meant to play in this twisted game? The answers, Fitzroy knew, would come. But whether they were the kind of answers one wanted, that was another matter entirely. The moon hung heavy in the sky, its pale light spilling over the pirate village like a silent witness to the night's brutality. The pit was fully opened now, a gaping maw in the earth surrounded by jagged wooden stakes and crude traps. The crowd gathered at its edge, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of torches. They drank heavily, their laughter coarse and unrestrained, their bets shouted with the fervor of men who lived for chaos. Fitzroy and Garret stood at the edge of the pit, flanked by the old man, his staff clinking softly with each step. The boys' eyes darted nervously, taking in the scene before them. Sahale sat in a chair at the pit's edge, her white eyes gleaming like twin orbs of moonlight. She was regal in her stillness, her presence commanding even amid the drunken revelry. Fitzroy felt her gaze on him, cold and unyielding, and he shivered despite the heat of the torches. Garret stood beside him, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. They were placed on either side of Sahale, their positions deliberate, as though they were part of the spectacle. Below them, 4 pirates stood in the pit, 2 young, their faces taut with determination, and 2 older, their expressions hardened by years of violence. Weapons lay scattered across the pit's floor, crude and deadly, while spiked traps loomed like silent predators. The pirates bowed deeply as Sahale motioned, their movements intentional, of respect. And then, without warning, they broke, racing to retrieve the weapons and begin their fight. The crowd roared, their voices rising in a cacophony of excitement and malice. Fitzroy watched, his heart pounding, as the men clashed with brutal force. The younger pirates moved quickly, their strikes sharp and calculated, while the older ones fought with the weight of experience. For several minutes, the battle produced no outcome, the men circling each other like wolves testing their prey. Fitzroy's breath caught as Sahale leaned forward, her gaze shifting to the boys. These young men have trained for years to earn a place aboard the ships that patrol our waters. They have trained, but have never killed. Sahale's words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Fitzroy noticed Garret shift, his unease palpable. The crowd erupted in cheers as one of the older pirates was impaled on the spikes, his scream piercing the night. Fitzroy winced, his stomach twisting as the man begged for mercy. The plea was short-lived. His opponent beheaded him with a single brutal stroke. Fitzroy turned away, his breath shallow, but Sahale's gaze pulled him back. The second pair of pirates fought with equal ferocity, their movements a blur of violence. The younger man seemed to gain the upper hand, his strikes landing with precision, but the tables turned again, the fight continuing in a deadly dance. Fitzroy's eyes darted between the combatants, his mind racing. Sahale's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and unyielding. They must never hesitate in delivering a fatal blow. Fitzroy glanced at Sahale, her white eyes locking onto his with an intensity that forced his gaze back to the pit. He swallowed hard, his hands trembling at his sides. Garret shifted on the other side, his unease mirrored in his expression. The crowd screamed as the second older pirate landed the fatal blow against his younger opponent, the fight ending in a single, final, brutal strike. Fitzroy felt the weight of the moment press down on him, the reality of what lay ahead sinking in. Sahale stood, her movements fluid, commanding. The 2 remaining pirates bowed deeply, their gestures reverent. Sahale returned the bow, her gaze steady, and spoke with authority. "You have both earned your place upon a raider. Now take your prize." The pirates climbed out of the pit, their bodies slick with sweat and blood. Fitzroy and Garret watched as 2 young women were pushed into their arms, their movements sluggish, their eyes glazed. The pirates grabbed the women by the wrists, dragging them off into the darkness of the jungle. Fitzroy's stomach churned, his mind reeling at the sight. Garret's face was pale, his expression unreadable. Sahale turned to the boys, her voice calm but commanding. "What strikes your eyes as primitive in nature are the very foundations of this world. Study your texts, steel your bodies, hone your minds and souls. All will be called upon." The ground beneath them trembled, the echoes of the pit's violence lingering in the air. Fitzroy felt the weight of Sahale's words settle over him, a promise of what was to come. He glanced at Garret, their shared fear unspoken but understood. The night pressed in around them, the pit's darkness, a reflection of the world they were now bound to navigate.